Hi, welcome to another Rich Habits, Poor Habits webcast with Michael Yardney in Australia and Tom Corley across in the United States. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Michael. How you doing? Everything's good here.
Oh, you're having a very interesting time in the United States, and we're having a lot of fun watching you from down under, Tom. But today we're going to spend a bit more time talking about the daily habits that help people get rich. But I'd like to, on the request of a number of people who've actually sent me some emails, have a bit of a talk about the daily habits that stop you becoming rich. Because this series of videos is getting a lot of views on our YouTube, on our Facebook, on our individual blogs. And thank you for all those people sending Tom and me emails about it. I know you're getting a lot of comments about it too, aren't you, Tom?
Yeah, getting a lot of comments and responding to a lot of comments, which I always love doing. And so I don't mind it at all. But yeah, they've picked up quite a bit since you and I started this a couple months ago.
So what somebody's asked recently, Tom, is what should we avoid doing? You keep telling us the things we should doing, and that's a very insightful question, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, Michael, that's why when I did this study, this Rich Habits study, I didn't just focus on what you should be doing. I wanted to understand, yeah, it's great what rich people do X, Y, and Z. That's fine, but what are poor people doing that's holding them back? We call them poor habits, you and I. And so I not only documented the rich habits, but I also documented the poor habits, the habits that hold poor people back. And then what was interesting about that is the percentages, the data on the rich people with respect to these poor habits was very low. In other words, they didn't participate in or didn't have these poor habits. And I said, wow, that's important. So it's not only important to be forging good habits, it's also important to become aware of your bad habits and to avoid them.
So in your 5-year study, Tom, you followed rich people and poor people. And again, this is not a judgment of people, but in general, most of us want to become wealthy and we wonder how to do that. And it does involve understanding finance and money and investment, but also you can speed things up by modeling people who are successful. And we all model people. Sometimes we don't recognize it. Sometimes you're modeling the Kardashians on TV because that's what you watch. And sometimes you're modeling successful people. So Tom, let's talk about some of the common habits that poor people have that we should avoid. One of them you mentioned is gambling. Tell us a bit about that, please.
Well, gambling is an interesting poor habit. I did a little bit of research, meaning I looked at studies on gambling. Why is it that so many poor people gamble? And a lot of these studies pointed in the direction that basically spelled out the fact that these poor people feel hopeless. So gambling for poor people puts them on an even playing field with rich people. It's the only way that they're on the even playing field with rich people because the odds are so astronomically, it's rare for you to win in a lottery, let's say. But rich people and poor people are on the same playing field. So psychologically, it's a way for poor people to, even it out. But the problem with that is rich people aren't gambling. So the poor people are gambling. They're looking for the quick fix. And meanwhile, the rich people are spending, 10 years devoting their time to investing in their dreams and their goals. And poor people are just gambling on a weekly basis.
Well, I know your study showed that 52% of poor people bet on sport once a week and 77% of them played the lottery every week. Tom, I've heard it said that gambling, the lottery, is a tax for people who can't do maths. And I think that's actually a pretty good way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a tax on being poor. It's kind of society's way of saying, hey, here's an out. And if you gamble, and you should see I've written several articles on how some of these states really lure in the poor people. They all have a different sales pitch for you to gamble, to invest in their lottery tickets. But of course, they know that you're never going to win. Most people don't.
So it's a get-rich-quick scheme, and we know that unfortunately that doesn't work. Another poor habit that I believe you in your studies suggested we should avoid is unhealthy eating, eating unhealthy foods and not sticking to your diet. Tell us a bit about that, Tom.
Yeah, well, this whole health area surrounding the rich habits, it really caught me by surprise, Michael, because I thought I had this impression that wealthy people were actually, big fat. Big fat people who indulge in all sorts of bad, unhealthy habits. And what I found out was the opposite was true. Not only weren't they overweight for the most part, and I have data on this, but they were exercising every day. And why is that important? Well, I found that the aerobic exercise was one of the reasons why poor people were smarter, why rich people were smarter than the poor people. And you can say, well, how does exercise make you smarter? The aerobic exercise in particular feeds your brain with oxygen and glucose and something called BDNF. It's a protein that's created by the brain. It's like miracle grow for the brain. So the poor people weren't getting any of these things. Rich people were, and they were consequently increasing their IQ over their lifetimes. And that helped them to make quick decisions and right decisions because they're able to accumulate a lot of facts because they had sharper brains. And they had, because they were constantly feeding their brain and nurturing it, their brains were operating better. So that was why exercise is so important, I found in my research.
Tom, you also in your research found that one of the poor habits we should avoid is drinking too much alcohol. Are you allowed to have the occasional beer or wine, or nothing at all? What's your thought on that, Tom?
Yeah, most of the wealthy people had 2 or fewer drinks a night, if they were drinking at all. Many of them didn't even drink, but the ones that did drink, they had 2 or fewer. Most of the time, it was 1. The poor people, on the other hand, they were drinking 3, 4, 5, or 6 drinks a night. It was almost an anesthetic, to try and anesthetize themselves against their lives. They were so miserable. So alcohol was it's just a cheap, easy way, quick way to boost your dopamine. Rich people are boosting the dopamine by pursuing goals and achieving goals. So they're getting the dopamine rush that way. Poor people don't, they're not pursuing dreams and goals. So they're getting the dopamine rush by drinking alcohol every day.
Tom, we're talking about the toxic habits that you should avoid, the poor habits you should avoid. And one of the things you suggested in your study is that you've got to be careful who you hang out with. You should avoid hanging out with what you call toxic people. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I found in not only my research, but third-party studies that I've read, and I read a lot of these things, what I found is that your habits are like a virus. They spread throughout your social network. So if you surround yourself with people who are drinking too much, and they're close friends, and you associate with them on a regular basis, you are by default going to become a greater consumer of alcohol. If you hang out with people who gamble, same thing. However, wealthy people surround themselves with people that have the habits that they want to have. I call them accountability partners, but basically they're people that are doing the right things. They're exercising every day. So wealthy people will surround themselves with people that are exercising, people that are reading books. So they, like a virus, those habits infect the wealthy people, and they start engaging in those habits, those activities, and it helps improve their lives.
Tom, there's nothing new about this. One of my early mentors, Jim Rohn, taught that you are about the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most. So you're only going to succeed in life if you surround yourself with the right type of people, with people who are positive, not people who are negative. Tom, another thing in your studies I found was that you were concerned that some people watch too much TV, and this is a poor habit that one should avoid.
Yeah, so Michael, keep in mind when I was doing my research, it was between 2004 and 2008. Social media was really just in its infancy. So now what's happening, especially with the millennials, social media and your phone, your iPhone or your Droid, is now replacing the TV. It's replaced the TV. So, TV is a horrible waste of time. And I found in my research that a large percentage of the poor people watched reality TV shows. And they watched, on average, more than 2 hours of TV a day. They were averaging about 3 hours a day. And I suspect now, if I was going to go back and do that research, I'd find out that they're, sitting on Facebook or on Twitter or on Pinterest or on Snapchat 3 hours a day.
YouTube's the other big one, isn't it, Tom? A lot of people are spending the time watching videos on YouTube today rather than on...
Yeah, that's right. So they're wasting their time.
Except our ones, they're educational. So we better be...
Well, the podcasts and the YouTubes, like the TEDx and the thing that we're trying to do here to help people, the smart people, the people that are on the trajectory of trying to become wealthy, who are trying to consume information that's going to help them in life. They may be on Facebook, they may be on Twitter, but they're doing it for business reasons or for self-improvement reasons. That's a whole different thing. If you're sitting there watching a bunch of kittens play with a yarn, that's not self-improvement. I don't know how that's going to help your life. Unless you have kittens, and you're a pet store owner or something like that. But my point is that if you're going to engage in social media and on the internet, spend your time on the internet, if you want to be successful, you have to be looking at sites that are going to help improve your life in some way, shape, or form, like ours.
Tom, there are so many more poor habits that we should avoid on a daily basis. If it's okay, can we come back next week and continue on with this list, because there's a number of other things I'd like to discuss with you.
Yeah, be happy to.
Okay, so for those of you who've enjoyed this, watch our blogs next week, where Tom and I will individually on our blogs be bringing the next episode of this. If you are enjoying these sessions, please pass them forward. Send a link to this to one of your friends or a couple. Pass it forward if you're getting some benefit. And if you've got any topics that you would like Tom or I to discuss, just leave a comment down below in our blogs and we will get back to you. Just like this particular session was brought to you because somebody said, hey, tell us what we should avoid doing rather than what we should be doing. So thanks again. Look forward to seeing you next week, Tom.
Sounds good, Michael. See you next week.
Great. Bye.